first you have to orient yourself with the heart, like what is up, what's down, what's front, what's back. So when looking at the heart, can you all tell that this part has vessels sticking out the top, and this part comes to a point? The top, this is the top, or the superior part of the heart, and this is where all the vessels come off of it. This is called the base of the heart. Okay, this is called the base of the heart where the vessels come off. This is called the apex of the heart. Okay, inside of the heart you have chambers or cavities. Those cavities are separated into atria and ventricles. The atria are going to be near the base of the heart, and the ventricles are going to be near the apex. So you can think apex looks like a V, ventricles V. Okay, so atria near the base of the heart, ventricles near the apex of the heart. What's anterior versus posterior? Does everyone see this huge vessel coming off and kind of at a diagonal? This is the pulmonary trunk, so this is the anterior side of the heart. Okay? When you flip it over, you don't see that pulmonary trunk, do you? No. So this is the posterior side of the heart. Does that make sense? So look at these two. This is where you see the pulmonary trunk. This is anterior, no pulmonary trunk. This is posterior. Okay? When you open up the heart, and this is, someone got confused, this is the posterior side, and when I open it up, they got confused with what's left or right. And see how, when I open up, can everyone tell that one half of the heart is much larger than the other half? As far as the tissue that's surrounding it and all of that. The part that has the larger cavities, so in here, this is the larger cavity, set of cavities. Over here, these are the larger set of cavities. And it's surrounded by much thicker muscle. This is the left side of the heart. The side with the smaller cavities and the thinner muscle, this is the right side of the heart, okay? And it doesn't matter if you're looking at it from anterior view or posterior view, if it has bigger cavities and thicker muscle, that's the left. If it has smaller cavities and thinner muscle, it's the right, okay? It's just, you're looking at this from anterior, so the left is actually the left and the right is actually the right. This, you're looking at it from posterior, so it looks opposite, but it's not. Yes? Does that make sense? Okay, so don't let that get you confused with what's left or right. You want to look at the size of the cavities and the size of the muscle that surrounds it. So let's talk about the tissues. Looking at this posterior side, does everyone see this flap, this tissue right here? This is the remnants of what is called the pericardial sac or the pericardium. It's a dense, fibrous, connective tissue that encapsulates the entire heart, but I had to cut it away so that you could see the heart, okay? This is the pericardial sac or the pericardium. What function do you think it serves? Protection. Purely protective. Reduce friction so that the heart isn't directly rubbing up against the thoracic cage or the other organs, so it's purely protective. This is the pericardium or the pericardial sac. If you're just touching the heart itself, the outside of the heart, this is called the epicardium. It's so tightly adhered to the heart that it's almost impossible to tease away. This is the epicardium. It would be a thin layer of epithelium that would create a serous fluid to help lubricate and reduce friction. Okay, this is the epicardium. When you open up the heart, does everyone see that there is tissue that surrounds the cavities, and then there's a smooth tissue that actually lines the cavities? Does everyone see that? Yes? And if y'all need to stand behind or do whatever you need to do in order to see, okay? The muscle it's muscle, but the tissue that surrounds the cavities, this rougher tissue, this is called myocardium. Myo for what? Muscle. So this is the actual contractile tissue of the heart that will contract to push the blood wherever it needs to go. Okay, so this is myocardium. The tissue that lines the cavities, this really smooth tissue, is called endocardium. Endo because it's the most inside. Endocardium. Why do you think that tissue has to be super smooth?
To allow for easier blood flow.
To reduce friction and allow for easier blood flow. The endocardium is continuous with the endothelium of the blood vessels. The endothelium is the innermost simple squamous layer of the blood vessels where the blood will actually touch. Yes? And that has to be really smooth too because the blood vessels has to what? They have to carry blood all the way to all the different tissues. You want as little friction as possible. So it's really, really smooth. And that's why it lines the cavities. Those cavities are the parts of the heart that fill with the blood. Okay, the blood has to pass through those cavities. On the test, how do you know, like, am I talking about tissue or structure? What is it that I mean? If I have a pin in here, I'll have a note card next to it, and I'll ask, what is this specific tissue type? What would you say? Myocardium. If I ask, what is this specific structure, you would say the interventricular septum. Okay? This is called the interventricular septum because it separates the two ventricles. Interventricular septum separates the two ventricles. This is important when we talk about the cardiac conduction system, okay? The cardiac conduction pathway. All right, so what else? Oh, so now I'm going to start with the pathway of blood. And as I go through the pathway of blood, we'll come full circle. We'll end where we started. And I'll also point out all the structures along the way that you have to identify on the cow heart. So what I'm going to do first is start at the lungs. So blood is in our lung. It's in the blood vessels of our lungs. What happens at the lungs? Gas exchange. What gases go where? Oxygen goes into the blood. CO2 goes out. We exhale that. So now our blood is oxygen rich or oxygen poor? Oxygen rich, okay? So now we have blood that has a whole bunch of oxygen from the lungs. What do we need to do with that oxygenated blood? Get it to our body. Why?
So that all the organs can use that.
So that our cells can use the oxygen. For what? Cellular respiration. Why? To make ATP energy. So this is how, like, y'all need to just not memorize and know this stuff, but, like, why? What's the whole point of this, okay? So from our lungs, we have to get it to our heart because our heart provides the force to get our blood where it needs to go, okay? So if we look at the left side near the base of the heart, you'll see these vessels right here. These are called pulmonary veins. Pulmonary veins, okay? Pulmonary veins. This is where I talk about what is a good definition of an artery versus a vein. Arteries carry blood away from the heart, arteries away. Veins carry blood to the heart. Lots of students will say arteries carry oxygenated blood and veins carry deoxygenated blood, but that's not always the case. Here's a situation where we have veins, but what type of blood is it? Oxygenated blood, okay? Oxygenate. I always have itches on my face when I have, like, organs in my hands. Goodness gracious. All right, so pulmonary veins from the lungs, it's going to carry oxygenated blood to the, oh my goodness. Can you pause for a second?